when you look at life from that pair of glasses or through that lens, you're able to constantly put yourself in the driver's seat, which is paramount to having not only a positive mindset, but a conscious mindset.
Hello, Patrick Lilly here, and welcome to the Rev Podcast, where we ask the question, what does success mean to you? We have coming up our first digital conference, our first Rev Digital Conference, Thursday, November 5th and Friday, November 6th. We've timed it purposefully to be right after the election so you can focus on something that's going to improve your life as opposed to the tension that's going to be in the world at that time. We have some really great speakers, and I'm excited about the conference. Ashton Gustafson speaking on what's essential, Danielle Garofalo on creating valuable content, Shay and Nobu Hatta on digital integration, Kianga Deverington on cryptocurrencies, and Boomer Foster on an economic forecast for 2021, in addition to many other wonderful speakers. If you just want to live stream the 2 days, it's $150. And if you want to be able to download all the breakouts and all the main stage whenever it's convenient for you, the price is $300. And you can go to realestate.vision instead of .com, realestate.vision, and register there. We hope to join our family and to make this a productive time of your life. One of the things that I have found, and I think most of us know innately, is that mindset is probably the number one attribute to one's success. And it's not just a positive mindset, it's a mindset that's going to help you achieve your goals in life and what you vision for your life. So we talked about this topic before, but it's always nice to come back to it because it's so important. And we're going to take it from a different angle today. So I'd like to welcome our guest, Stacy Bahrenfuss. Hey, Stacy.
Hey, Patrick. Thanks for having me.
Well, you know, my last name is Lilly, so that's pretty odd. But yours is even more of a mouthful. What's the origin behind Bahrenfuss?
Yes, it is. So it is German, and they tell me it means barefoot, no shoe. Yes.
Is that your family name, or is that a husband's family name?
It is my family name.
Oh my God, that's hysterical. I love it. And if you're barefoot and pregnant, then you're absolutely. I wonder how they say that in German. Bahrenfuss, and I have no idea.
Exactly.
That cracks me up. So, before we get started, why don't we tell a little bit about your business? So you do two things. You both sell real estate in Idaho, and you also do some coaching. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, that's correct. So I've had a real estate company for the last 14 years and added a development and construction side to it over the past 2 years. And through it all, have always wanted to bring in an element of how can I leave the industry better than when I arrived? And, there isn't a lot of professional training offered to realtors or, to realtors from the business side of it. And so I've, tried to implement, bringing that into my team over the years of working on the mindset aspect, but more than anything, implementing the basic business principles that are missing from the professional training offered to real estate agents. And so over the past 5 years, I've brought in that coaching angle, which is, systemizing different tools that my team have used over the years to offer that to other agents so that they can see the exact path to any level of success they want to build by using the tools we've created.
Awesome. One of the things that I am looking forward to in this episode is that you've actually created some systemization around the concept of mindset. And usually when we discuss mindset, it's all ethereal, a emotional thinking. We obviously do that with you, but you take some very specific steps that enable you to have the mindset you want. So we talked a little ahead of time, Stacy. My understanding is that your first step to a positive and productive mindset is identifying where you are now, both in your life and your business. Would you mind going into that into greater detail?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to. So when I, first assessed this, and this, by the way, is a tool that I use daily, weekly, monthly, for myself. And it's something that is truly what I say is like the key to my success, is the first step is seeing where you're at. And even though it's the end of the quarter or we're almost at the end of the quarter, it's so valuable to even week to week take your temperature, if you will, take an assessment on where you are currently, because if you don't, it's so easy to go into our default program, which is more of that unconscious approach towards things, where I find we can constantly be, looking at, okay, where am I at? What has shifted? It allows you to, be in the driver's seat of your results and the outcome you're going for.
Yeah, and I love the word that you used was unconscious, that if you're not taking the temperature of where you are, you're not being conscious. You're just floating through life. And it's pretty hard to be proactive in your life if you're not conscious of where you are at any moment. That goes both with business and relationships and just driving down the street. Otherwise, you're going to lead a reactive life or an unconscious life, and either one is not really going to help you achieve what you want to achieve. So I think it's interesting that you said that. How do you relate that identifying where you are specifically to developing a positive and productive mindset?
How I relate that is similar to when you're traveling anywhere and just knowing where you're starting is truly the only way you can get to where you're going, just because that's the starting point, obviously. But when you look at life from that pair of glasses or through that lens, you're able to constantly put yourself in the driver's seat, which is paramount to having not only a positive mindset, but a conscious mindset, because it's one thing to be positive, but what I really want people to consider is taking it a step further and actually going to the root of whatever it is that they are trying to achieve, going to the root in themselves to become conscious. Because if they do that, it's not a Band-Aid, if you will. A lot of times with positive mindset, it's you have to keep doing the rah, 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 or the thing that creates the positivity, where if you add this element to it, I find that it is a lasting transformation and the path is much easier. And I don't mean there is an effort. I mean that there's an ease because of where you're coming from.
I would guess that there's a grounding where it grounds you or centers you also.
Precisely.
So much of, when people get into the mindset, I love the fact that you kind of called it rah, 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 which rah, rah, rah without any grounding is really sort of just flapping your wings in the air and not helping you to really fly or to soar. Oh, I like that analogy. That was good.
Oh, that was good. Write that down.
I don't know. That just came from somewhere. I don't know. All right. So we've identified where you are and where you want to be. Then the next step is visioning. Now, everybody, I think most people understand visioning, but let's talk about it and then let's take it a little deeper too. So in general, how would you define visioning in a mindset parameter?
For me, defining that looks like being really clear on the outcome that you want to achieve, but taking it a step further and actually inquiring with yourself, is that outcome limited in any way based upon my experience of my life to date? Or am I really going for what I want? Because sometimes, we want something that's way out there, but we can't necessarily see all the steps. So we settle for something that's closer. So that's that first part of visioning, is just checking yourself to make sure it's really, going all the way for what you want.
And what are some actual steps or procedures that people could use to do this visioning step?
Yeah. So the first thing is asking yourself, what is it that I really want to achieve, here? And that next question is what is this feeling that I'm chasing? Like, what is it about having the successful business or having this family? What feeling do I believe that that's going to make me feel? Because sometimes that's actually the wrong reason to pursue something, because once you get there, as we all know, happiness is not outside of us, it's within, and we have to create that. So it can be, we can get off track easier when we are chasing something. Whereas if we just flip that on its head and go, okay, what is it about this business? Why do I want to build it? And asking that bigger question of, what do I want? What's my vision? What kind of impact do I want to make? Like, who do I want to be in the world? That takes it a step further in further asking, what emotion, what would it be like once I achieve that? Then you can actually start working on that now. And it might even change that ultimate outcome, because once you know that's in your control, you're not chasing that thing. It may alter it in that way.
Yeah, I love the addition of how will I feel when this is achieved. Again, in some sense, is a grounding technique, because it's putting you in that space, which then allows you to relate any activities that you're doing to get there is being now associated with what I assume is going to be a positive feeling or emotion.
Exactly.
That's an interesting element. So everybody has a different process, Stacy, and some people are verbal, some people are auditory, some people are kinesthetic, some people are visual, most people are visual. So creating this vision obviously is going to vary from person to person. So like some people like vision boards, some people like journaling. I have a dear friend who likes to just record what he's saying because that's a way that works for him. What are some of your thoughts about the different ways that people can actually do the visioning, besides, in addition to asking the great questions that you presented?
One of the things that I feel is necessary, and if I look back on the different visions, or outcomes that I've pursued and the different ventures, the times that the venture has taken longer to come to fruition versus the time that, it was shorter, more enjoyable, I found that the piece that was missing, for me, was going deeper into that feeling, which I know I've touched on, but it truly is the missing piece in what is out there as far as the techniques most people use, because I feel like, when you can use the vision board to satisfy that part in you, or the recording, whatever the way is that you learn, comprehend best, having that element, but then taking it a step to literally make a list of the emotions. Because so often when we ask, what is it that I would feel once I achieve that? Sometimes you don't have the answer. I know quite often I have sat in silence for a moment to say, gosh, I don't even know what I would feel, because I've been so wrapped up in the chasing that just taking the moment to reflect on it, I feel, would be that other missing piece to specifically answer your question in that visioning process, which would be just really being and sitting, reflecting with what these emotions are to make it real as far as the feelings are concerned.
That just feels really good to me. So I'm going to say, that sounds like words of wisdom to me, Stacy. The other element is that I think one of the mistakes that people make when they do visioning work is they limit it to one or two topics. So they'll limit it to maybe their business and maybe a relationship. there's many, many more aspects to your life than just a relationship in your business. There's family and relationship and friendships. There's community involvement. There's health and wellness. I could go on and on. But I think it's probably as important that if you want to actually have multiple visions that make for a more complete version of yourself.
I couldn't agree more. I think that piece is what I'm hearing you say is actually, having that underlying, like what I call spiritual vision, like for who you are as a person and how you show up in the world, who you are going to be in these negotiations or businesses or relationships. And that's the part that we aren't necessarily guided to focus on. It's more the achievement. And so if you have that underlying, vision for your life, then creating the visions in each category is, the icing on top, if you will. It doesn't, make or break you because you're so clear on the vision of who you are showing up as.
I think that makes a lot of sense. All right. So we've talked about identifying where you are, visioning where you want to be. And then, there's a very practical and important step of actually a daily practice. So talk to us about that.
I always want to look at things as if I only had 15 minutes, what could I do that would still set me up for success? And on days that I have the extra time to incorporate reading or learning in addition, that's great. But all the tools that, I like to use, I want to make sure that they are adaptable to real life, because we don't all have time to, sit and meditate for 5 hours as much as maybe we would want to or not want to. It's just nice to have that, quick use tool. And so what I find is that since I have implemented a routine, in my daily schedule, it has changed the way that I lead. It's changed the way I've been able to help, my team members and clients. And that routine is a mix of breath work, meditation, a gratitude practice, and then focusing on those visions that we talked about and the short and long-term goals that go along with it.
All right, so let's go through each one of those elements in your daily routine and then share with each one how it affects your mindset, please.
Yes, absolutely. So the first one is, breath work and meditation. And so what I like to do to, keep it short and sweet so that it is realistic and doable every day is it's a 3-minute practice, and it's simply taking a deep inhale. And when you exhale, double the count. So for example, I would breathe in for 3, I would exhale for 6. And that's what's called conscious breathing. And so,
and I would also say is try to breathe from deep down to your diaphragm as opposed to doing superficial breathing, which most of us do. And there's plenty of videos on YouTube on breathing from your diaphragm, which you can easily search for.
Yes. Yeah, that's such a great point. And one of the things, with that is studies show, and it's very easy to, once you implement this, see that when you take that pause, it allows you to plug into that calm and clear space that everything then you add on top of it to what we've spoken about before. It's set on a grounded foundation versus the just doing the rah-rah, as the example we spoke about earlier, and it being, flapping your wings and not actually being integrated into a deep level. So that's the purpose of step 1.
And the other purpose, I think, too, is at least from my belief system, is that when you ground yourself and quiet your mind in both these two processes of deep breathing and meditation, it creates a space where inspiration can come into your life. Because if you're always doing, there's no room for inspiration to come in.
That's such a great point. Yes.
So 3 minutes, and do you do this when you wake up? What, have you already had breakfast? Tell me when you incorporate this.
Yeah, so it is, I get up, I get my tea. I love Earl Grey tea and go right.
Me
Oh,
too.
that's awesome. Yes. So I grab my tea and I just go and sit. I have a meditation cushion in a space in my room and start that process from there.
And then how many minutes do you meditate for after 3 minutes of deep breathing?
Typically it's 15 minutes. In the ideal day, this whole practice lasts 30 to 45 minutes. But again, the short version is available so that it's something I can do every day.
Yeah, and if you can only pull 5 or 10 minutes, because that's what you can do, that's good too.
Exactly.
All right, next step.
Next step is writing down 3 things you're grateful for. And this is after you've done the breath work, writing those things down to then focus the mind on all the good in your life.
So give some examples of what are potential things that you could write down for gratitude.
Yeah, so one thing that, I'll do first is I reflect on the day before and the good that happened. So, I am grateful that my husband made me dinner. I'm grateful, that I could take a walk with my dog. Grateful that I have the legs to be able to walk. I mean, the very simple things gets your mind basically, honed in to pay attention to the simple good things that are happening, which then brings about more good.
So what happens to your mindset, Stacy, when you're focusing on what you're grateful for versus what went wrong yesterday?
Well, what happens is, endorphins certainly, fly at a different level. But you start to look for more things that are going well instead of what's going wrong. And that just cultivates a completely different, breeding ground for creating success, having those intuitive hits, that inspiration, like you mentioned before.
And let's give an outlier example. Suppose you just had a shitty day. You found out one of your loved ones has cancer. A seller yelled at you yesterday, and your dog threw up on the carpeting. Really just one of those really, really bad days. Tell me how you can switch from that focus to finding gratitude even in a day like that.
I first pay attention to how I'm focusing on myself in each of those situations. I'm not actually focused on the person that has cancer. I'm focused on how I might lose this person. So that's bringing awareness to how I'm focused on self helps me detach from that piece. From there, that's why I love that, 3-minute breath work is I do that in the car. I've done it after, a seller has yelled at me or been upset about something. And the detachment and understanding, okay, wow, I've really been focused on myself. Then being able to sit and take those, deep breaths for 3 minutes allows you to, have that calm space again to think rationally and come from that calm inner state.
And I can only speak for myself on this next part, Stacy, but I notice when I focus on myself in terms of, this was shitty, this I didn't do well, that sort of thing, I generally am not the best version of myself. And when I can detach from those problems and focus on my relationship to others, my relationship to God or source, my relationship to my loved ones and what I'm grateful for, and sometimes just my relationship to myself for, grateful for my health, it changes my mindset to a much, much more positive one. So not only am I ready for the day and what the day's challenges are, but I'm also a lot more pleasant to be around.
Yeah, you're coming from that space of contribution, and not focusing on ourselves. If we're focused on ourselves, that's disconnection from everything else, separation, which causes the stress, the chaos, etc. So that completely makes sense.
Yeah, I like the way you call that disconnection. That sounds really good to me, Stacy, because when you're focusing on yourself, you're disconnected. And that's a good term. I like that. I'm going to use that. What's the next step?
So once you have completed that, then go into your visioning, but specifically what your short-term and long-term goals are. And so I just pick 3. And so each thing, as you'll notice, it's 3 minutes of breathing. It's 3 pieces of what you're grateful for, gratitude, and then your 3, short-term, and if there's long-term goals, within that, so that every single day you're coming from that clear space, you're doing that breath work, you're then planting that first, healthy seed, positive seed of focusing on gratitude. Then that is, the ideal grounds to then plant the seeds of these goals and outcomes, because you're focusing on them and they're built amongst that strong foundation that's grounded to be able to fulfill those. And then what happens is you tap into more inspiration because you have planted those seeds in that precise order. And so you'll notice, someone you've been thinking about calls you because you have already started that momentum in the morning.
That's a good word, momentum there. So a couple of things that I find interesting. First of all, you mentioned about, say, focusing on 3 things that you want to vision for that specific day, being long-term or short-term. And in the short term, I would highly recommend that one of the things you vision on is, what is the one thing I can do today that will help me to achieve a specific goal or help me get closer to a specific goal? I think what's the one thing that's going to be the most productive and it's going to help me the most. I think that's something that I would, consider adding. And again, I really love the idea of, while you're doing this visioning, you tie it into what will it feel like when these things are achieved, because I think that makes, I love this idea, Stacy. I think that makes the association so much stronger, so that whatever you need to do today is associated to those emotions.
Yes. And I really love the idea, that you just added too, just because, that focusing on that one thing, that language combined with that, strong emotion, those are the things that help completely focus our mind, mind and body, which is, the language. What's that one thing that allows you to just ask a little different question connected with that emotion? It is a completely new experience, of how to have that positive mindset, but also ground it in such a way that it's lasting and practical as well.
Yeah, and I hope everybody who is moved by this or inspired by this will do this in all aspects of their life, not just for business and not just, for a loved one. So, Stacy, I really enjoyed this conversation. We've covered mindset a lot, but it's always nice coming from a different angle. And I felt like this was a really grounded, practical angle to mindset. I really like that a lot. Stacy, if people want to get a hold of you, either because they want to send you some referrals for your real estate business in Idaho or for your coaching, how would they get a hold of you?
So it's best to go to my website, which is limitlesswithstacyb.com. As you mentioned when we first got on the call, my last name is quite long, Bahrenfuss. So people call me Stacy B. So that's why the website is limitlesswithstacyb.com.
You know what? I'm gonna forget that, and I'm gonna look you up, and I'm gonna try to find barefootstacy.com. And I know that's not. I don't think that's tag you want. Hey, listen, Stacy. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with our listeners. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity, Patrick. It was great speaking with you today.